Join me as I dive into the chilling mystery of a small town family's darkest secrets. Can I uncover the truth before it haunts us all? In the heart of a quaint small town, there's a family just like any other, or so it seems. Behind closed doors, they live a life filled with love, laughter, and the occasional argument. But every family has its secrets, the ones they keep hidden from the world, and this family is no exception. These secrets, however minor they might seem, have a way of weaving into the fabric of their lives, quietly affecting their relationships and the way they interact with each other. They look just like any other family. The Moores, an old farmhouse tucked into the corner of Elbridge County, a place where nothing really ever happened, until it did. Mother, father, two kids, and a dog named Gunner. They waved to neighbors, hosted BBQs in the summer, and hung lights every December. To the outside world, they were the postcard version of happiness. But the thing about postcards? They never show what's hidden behind the door. It started with the little things. A missing heirloom bracelet, a garage door found open when no one had used it, a window left ajar on a cold night. At first, these were brushed off. Small-town quirks. Maybe one of the kids being careless. Maybe dad forgot to lock up. But over time, the explanations began to feel stretched, and the silences started growing longer. It was a Tuesday in March when things took a sharper turn. 2:47 a.m. A knock at the door. Not a loud bang. Just three soft, deliberate knocks. Mary Moore, the mother, had been awake nursing a headache. She froze. No one came by at that hour. Not in Elbridge. Not unless something was very wrong. She peeked through the window, but saw no one. She waited, then checked the porch. Nothing. No footprints in the frost. No sign of life at all. That was the first night the nightmares began. And not just for Mary. From that night onward, everything inside the Moore home began to change. Dinner conversations dried up. The children, Ben, 12, and Katie, 15, started to avoid each other. Even Gunner, the dog, became more withdrawn. He stopped sleeping in the living room like usual and started scratching at their bedroom doors to be let in. He would stand facing the hallway some nights, growling at nothing. John, the father, tried to maintain normalcy. He told Mary she was just tired, that stress was making her paranoid. But even he couldn't explain the smell. A strange metallic odor that sometimes filled the hallway outside the basement door. The Moores rarely used the basement. It was mostly for storage, Christmas boxes, some old furniture, a dusty treadmill from a long-abandoned fitness phase. But Mary began to notice something odd. Every few days, the door to the basement was unlocked. Once she found it wide open, John insisted it must be the kids. But neither Ben nor Katie had any reason to go down there. Then one night, Mary ventured down. She said later that it felt wrong the moment her foot hit the last step. The air was damp, heavy, and that smell, that same metallic tang, was stronger than ever. At first, nothing looked out of place, until she noticed the photo album. It had been pulled from an old box and laid open on the floor. Page after page had been slashed with something sharp. Photos of the kids with their faces crossed out. Photos of her and John, scratched until only shadows remained. She didn't say a word to anyone. Not yet. 2 weeks later, Katie was assigned a school project, a family history video. She decided to dig out some of the old camcorder tapes from the attic, dusty relics of birthday parties and first steps. Mary was relieved at first. Maybe it would bring some joy back into the house. But Katie found something she wasn't meant to. A tape that wasn't labeled. Its casing slightly cracked. She pressed play. The video opened with normal scenes. Christmas morning, kids unwrapping gifts, John laughing with his Santa hat on his head. But midway through, the tape jumped. Static. Then something else. It was the same living room, but darker. The timestamp read 3:09 a.m. The footage shook violently, as if the camera was being moved quickly. A figure, barely visible, stood at the edge of the hallway. No one else was in frame. No audio. Just that figure, watching, then slowly stepping out of view. Katie screamed, and that was the first time the family called the police. Officer Dana Collins had been on the force for 15 years. She wasn't one to jump to conclusions. When Moore showed her the tape, she raised an eyebrow. "There's nothing definitive here," she said. "Could be a prank, a bad recording." But Mary insisted. So Dana agreed to do a walk-through of the house. Everything appeared normal until they reached the basement. Dana paused halfway down the stairs. "What's that smell?" she asked. She found the source behind an old shelf. A small, rotting animal carcass, stripped clean except for bone and fur. But what disturbed Dana most wasn't the carcass itself. It was the initials carved into the wall behind it. LM. No one in the family had those initials. Officer Collins left the Moore house that night with a knot in her stomach. LM. 2 letters that didn't match anyone in the family, not even a distant relative. She ran the initials through local databases. Nothing. Not in Elbridge, not in the surrounding counties. But something kept gnawing at her. She returned to the police station and dug into old property records. What she found made her blood run cold. Before the Moores moved in, the house had belonged to a woman named Leah Monroe, a reclusive woman, no known family. She'd lived in the house for nearly 40 years. Then one day, vanished. No forwarding address, no death certificate, just gone. And no one in town ever talked about her again. A few days after the tape incident, Katie got into a fight at school, totally out of character for her. When the school counselor called Mary in, she was expecting to talk about teenage angst. But what she heard was far worse. "Katie says someone keeps whispering to her at night," the counselor explained. "She says the voice knows things, family secrets." Mary froze. "What kind of secrets?" she asked. "She wouldn't say," the counselor replied. "Only that it was about her father, and someone named Leah." That name, Leah, hit Mary like a punch. Katie had never heard it before. They had never spoken it aloud in the house. So how did she know? Driven by desperation, Mary began searching the house from top to bottom. She pulled furniture away from walls, opened crawl spaces, tore up rugs. In the upstairs hallway, behind a loose panel near the attic entrance, she found it. A leather-bound diary, wrapped in what looked like an old pillowcase. The name on the front, written in faded ink, Leah M. Leah Monroe. Inside were dozens of pages, some torn, others barely legible. And what they revealed was horrifying. Leah had lived alone, but she hadn't always been alone. She wrote about a man who stayed with her from time to time, an unnamed guest who brought shadows with him. She described nights when she'd hear whispers. Nights she didn't remember going to sleep. Waking up in the basement, her hands muddy. The last entry was just 3 words. "He never left." Mary didn't tell John. Not yet. John had been growing distant, ever since the night of the first knock. He worked later, drank more, barely looked anyone in the eye. Mary confronted him the night she found the diary. "Do you know someone named Leah Monroe?" she asked. John hesitated, then said no. But Mary knew that hesitation. It was the same one he gave when he lied about smoking years ago. The same one when Katie broke the window and he tried to take the blame. So she checked his garage. Hidden beneath an old tarp was a metal lockbox. Inside were 3 things. A Polaroid photo of a woman standing by the oak tree in their backyard. A bracelet with the initials LM. And a set of handwritten letters addressed to "My dearest John." The truth hit Mary like a hammer. John had known Leah Monroe, but it was more than that. One of the letters revealed that they had met before he ever met Mary. He had been passing through Elbridge, fresh out of college. He'd stayed with Leah for a while. They had a relationship. Brief, intense, secret. And then, according to Leah's own words, he left. But not before something happened. The letter was vague, but the implication was clear. She'd become pregnant. She'd kept the child. And then the letter stopped. Mary's hands trembled as she read the last one. Leah accused John of abandoning her, of cursing her life, and she warned, "One day, your bloodline will return here, and I will still be waiting." Mary realized what Leah meant. John's children, Ben and Katie, they weren't just strangers in this house. They were family. After reading the letters, Mary barely spoke to John for 3 days. He knew she knew, but neither of them could say it out loud. The silence between them was deafening. Then, one night, the power in the house went out. No storm. No outage reported across town. Just darkness. The kids screamed from upstairs. Mary rushed to find them. Ben had locked himself in the bathroom. Katie was sobbing under her bed. They both said the same thing. She was in our room. They described a woman in the corner. Long gray hair, dirt on her feet, her face shadowed, but her eyes, those were crystal clear, and the same, ice blue, just like their father's. The next morning, Mary did something she never thought she would. She called a local historian. Old Mr. Arnold had lived in Elbridge for nearly 80 years. If anyone knew about Leah Monroe, it was him, and he did. He told her Leah had lived alone after her father passed. She rarely came into town, and when she did, people said she wasn't quite right. Rumors swirled about seances, strange lights in the windows, a missing baby, some said, though no one could ever prove it. But one thing everyone seemed to agree on, Leah had hated that oak tree in the backyard, said it whispered to her at night, said it held something that didn't want to stay buried. Mary remembered something from the diary, a line she had overlooked. He made me bury it beneath the oak, and now it won't sleep. Mary didn't tell anyone, not John, not the kids, what she planned to do. That evening, just after sunset, she took a flashlight and a shovel and walked out to the base of the oak. It was quiet, still, unnaturally so. Even the crickets had gone silent. She dug for hours. The soil was loose, like it had been disturbed before. Foot after foot. Her arms ached. Her breath fogged in the air. Then, thud, she hit something hard. She brushed the dirt aside and saw it. A small wooden box. Old, cracked, wrapped in faded cloth. Inside there were bones. Small, too small. And next to them, a locket. Mary opened it. On one side, a picture of a newborn baby. On the other, a lock of black hair. And carved into the bottom of the box, the initials JM. John Moore. Mary didn't confront John that night. She sat with the truth in her lap. The man she had married had once fathered a child with a woman who disappeared, a child who had died or been taken from this world. And for years, nothing was said. Buried, hidden, like Leah herself. But Mary also realized something else. The haunting, the voices. They weren't just about Leah's anger. They were about justice, about pain that had been silenced for too long. The house had absorbed it. The family had inherited it. It wasn't just a haunting. It was a reckoning. The next day, Mary took the box and drove to the edge of town, to a churchyard with a patch of land no one used anymore. She dug a shallow grave, placed the bones inside, whispered a prayer, but she didn't know what for. Afterward, she returned home and burned the letters. Every one of them, except the last. She kept that. That night, the house felt lighter, as if something had passed. The children started sleeping again. The smell in the basement disappeared. Even the dog lay peacefully by the fire. But Mary knew it wasn't over. Not entirely. Some secrets don't vanish. They linger. In the walls. In the bloodline. The oak tree still stands in the backyard. And sometimes, late at night, Mary swears she can see a woman watching from its base. She doesn't scream. She doesn't run. She just whispers, "I know." What do you think really happened beneath the oak tree? Was Leah Monroe simply a broken woman? Or was there something darker at play? Can a family truly escape the weight of its buried past? Drop your theories below and join us next time for another story that refuses to stay silent.